me ask you something. Think about how you got where you are right now. Not just the degrees, not just the late nights and the sacrifices, but the people. The woman who pulled you aside and told you to apply for that role. The mentor who gave you the real talk about how decisions were actually being made behind those closed doors. The leader who said your name when you were not in the room. Somebody made a way for you. And today we are going to talk about what it means to do the same for someone else while you are still climbing yourself. Welcome back to Rise and Thrive. I am Shay Blackman, founder and CEO of Shay Blackman Consulting, HR strategist, author, and your partner in navigating corporate spaces with power, purpose, and authenticity. If you are new here, every Wednesday this series is specifically for Black women in professional spaces. This is where we go deep on strategy, not sound bites, real talk, not corporate fluff. And if you are returning, welcome home. You know how we do. Today we are in Chapter 9 of my book, Rise and Thrive, a Black woman's blueprint for leadership excellence, and the chapter is called Lifting While Climbing. The opening quote comes from Toni Morrison. "The function of freedom is to free someone else." Let that sit for a moment. The function of your freedom, your education, your title, your seat at that table is not decoration. It is activation. And in a professional landscape where Black women still represent a fraction of senior leadership, the way we use our platforms is not optional. It is essential. Now, I want to be clear about something right from the top. Lifting while climbing is not about overextending yourself. It is not about taking on everyone else's career as your personal project. We are going to talk about doing this strategically, sustainably, and in a way that actually changes systems, not just individual outcomes. So let's get into it. Before we dive into the frameworks, I want to ground us in why this conversation is so urgent right now. We are watching a professional landscape in 2026 where the conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion are shifting. Some organizations are doubling down on their commitments. Others are quietly pulling back resources, restructuring DEI teams, and hoping nobody notices. And in the middle of all of that, Black women are still navigating the same core reality. We are frequently the first, the only, or one of very few in leadership spaces. Here's what that means practically. When you are the only one in the room, your presence becomes either a platform or a placeholder. A placeholder shows up, does the work, goes home. A platform recognizes that the seat you occupy is larger than you. It holds the weight of everyone who should have been there before you and everyone who deserves to come after you. And that distinction between placeholder and platform is exactly what Chapter 9 is about. In Rise and Thrive, I write about how the philosophy of lifting while climbing has deep roots in Black women's history. It goes all the way back to the National Association of Colored Women's motto. This is not new. But what is new is how we operationalize it inside modern corporate structures, where the politics are subtle, the stakes are high, and the energy required to advocate for others on top of advocating for yourself can feel exhausting. And that is exactly why we cannot leave this to chance. We need a framework. We need intentionality. We need a strategy that honors both our ambition and our legacy. So let me introduce you to the DOORS framework. In the book, I lay out what I call the DOORS framework, DOORS. Each letter represents a strategic lever you can pull from whatever position you hold right now. You do not have to be a vice president or a C-suite executive to use this. You just have to be willing to be intentional about how you show up for others. Let me walk through each one. D is for develop pipeline programs. This is about creating structured pathways, not just informal encouragement. Think about what you have access to right now. Can you establish internship connections with HBCUs? Can you design rotational assignments for high potential Black women on your team? Can you create shadowing opportunities so that someone earlier in her career gets exposure to senior level decision making? Here is what this looks like in real organizations. There was a company where a Black woman in senior operations noticed that the leadership pipeline was overwhelmingly homogeneous. Instead of waiting for someone in HR to fix it, she proposed a 12-month rotational program that paired high potential employees from underrepresented groups with different business units. Within 2 years, that company's promotion rates for Black women at the mid manager level increased by nearly a third. That is the power of developing pipeline programs. It was not a handout, it was structural change driven from inside. The first O is for open networks. Access is currency in corporate spaces, and too many Black women are locked out of the networks where real decisions get made. Opening your network means including junior Black women in important meetings. It means making strategic introductions. It means sharing invitation lists for key events. It means advocating for diverse representation on committees and task forces. I know what some of you might be thinking. If I bring someone along, will it look like I'm playing favorites? Let me reframe that for you. When you open your network, you are not playing favorites. You are correcting an imbalance. The networks that many of our white colleagues inherited through family connections, alumni circles, and social clubs, those are the real favorites. What you are doing is leveling the playing field, and there is nothing inappropriate about that. The second O is for offer sponsorship. And I want to draw a very clear line here because this is critical. Mentorship and sponsorship are not the same thing. A mentor talks to you. A sponsor talks about you. A mentor gives advice in private. A sponsor puts their reputation on the line in public. A mentor says, you should go for that role. A sponsor says, in the room where decisions are made, she is the right person for that role, and here is why. Black women are chronically over-mentored and under-sponsored. We have plenty of people who will sit down with us and share advice. What we do not have enough of are people who will recommend us for stretch assignments, advocate for us in promotion discussions, and create visibility for our achievements when we are not in the room. If you are in a position to sponsor someone, do it. Put your social capital on the line. That is how the game actually works, and we need more players on the field. R is for remove barriers. This one requires courage because it means you are not just building pathways, you are dismantling obstacles. Challenge bias policies. Address inequitable practices. Question exclusionary traditions. Reform evaluation criteria that were never designed with Black women in mind. Here is a practical example. We see in organizations where promotion criteria includes executive presence as a metric. But what that often codes for is a very specific presentation style that defaults to whiteness and maleness. Removing barriers means asking, who defined executive presence for this organization? And does that definition actually reflect the leadership styles that produce results? That is the kind of question that shifts culture. And finally, S is for share resources. Distribute access to advancement tools. Share professional development opportunities you hear about. Provide budget for training when you have budget authority. Offer access to executive coaches. Connect people to educational resources. Think about the last conference you attended, the last leadership development program you completed, the last article that changed how you thought about your career. Did you share it? Did you send that link? Did you forward that email to someone who could benefit? Sharing resources is one of the simplest, lowest cost, highest impact actions you can take every single week. And here is what I want you to hear clearly. Creating opportunities is not charity. It is strategic leadership. As I emphasize in my high-value leadership methodology, it strengthens the entire organization by expanding the talent pool and bringing diverse perspectives to decision-making tables. You are not doing anyone a favor. You are building a better organization. Now, I opened this episode with Toni Morrison's quote, and I want to stay with her for a moment because her life is one of the most powerful examples of what lifting while climbing actually looks like in practice. And I think too many of us know Morrison only as a novelist. We know Beloved. We know Song of Solomon. We know The Bluest Eye. But what many people do not know is that before Morrison became the literary icon we celebrate, she was a senior fiction editor at Random House. And in that role, she fundamentally reshaped American publishing. Morrison used her editorial position as a platform, not a placeholder. From the late 1960s through the early 1980s, she championed and published Black authors whose voices the publishing industry had either ignored or marginalized. She brought into print writers like Toni Bambara, Gail Jones, Angela Davis, and others. She did not just acquire their manuscripts and move on, she edited with intentionality. She advocated for their work to receive proper marketing. She paid attention to the details that determined whether a book would succeed or disappear. But here is the part that really speaks to the Doors framework. Morrison also helped create a collective called the Sisterhood. In 1977, Morrison, Alice Walker, Ntozake Shange, Audre Lorde, June Jordan, Paul Marshall, and other Black women writers began meeting monthly at each other's homes. They ate together, they drank champagne, they talked about their work, and they strategized about how to navigate a publishing industry that was not built for them. The Sisterhood was not a social club, it was a strategic network. Morrison led efforts to literally map out publishers and their openness to Black women writers. They shared resources, they made introductions, they created pathways where none existed. That is open networks. That is shared resources. That is what it looks like when someone at the top of her field says, "My success is incomplete if I am the only one." And look at the ripple effect. Morrison's advocacy as an editor did not just change those individual writers' careers. It helped launch the Black women's literary renaissance of the 1970s, a period that fundamentally reshaped American literature. Alice Walker went on to write The Color Purple. Audre Lorde's essays became essential texts for understanding intersectionality. Maya Angelou's autobiography opened the door for generations of Black women to see themselves in literature. That did not happen in a vacuum. It happened because women like Morrison understood that freedom means freeing someone else. Now think about that in your context. You may not be editing novels at Random House, but you have a team, you have a network, you have institutional knowledge, you have a voice. The question is, are you using it the way Morrison used hers? Are you developing pipeline, opening networks, offering sponsorship, removing barriers, and sharing resources? Because that is exactly what she was doing, while simultaneously writing some of the greatest literature in American history. She was not waiting until she made it to lift others. She was doing both at the same time. That is the model. Now, lifting while climbing is not just about individual mentorship. If we only focus on helping individuals navigate broken systems, the systems stay broken. Chapter 9 addresses this directly by introducing the change framework for systemic transformation, CHANGE. And I want to walk through this because it bridges the gap between personal advocacy and organizational impact. C is for critique constructively. When you see something that is inequitable in your organization, name it, but name it smart. Frame problems as organizational opportunities. Use data to support your observations. Come with solutions, not just complaints. And build a coalition before you go into that meeting. Lone dissenters get labeled. Coalition builders get results. H is for harness influence. Every committee seat, every budget decision, every hiring conversation is an opportunity to shape culture. You do not need to be the CEO to influence outcomes. You need to be strategic about where you invest your energy. Serve on committees that make policy. Influence through hiring. Model the inclusive practices you want to see. A is for align with power. This one is important. Connect your change agenda to organizational interests. If your company cares about innovation, show how diversity drives innovation. If they care about retention, demonstrate how inclusive cultures reduce turnover. Speak their language. Meet them where their priorities live. The business case for equity is strong. Use it. N is for navigate politics. Understand the informal power structures in your organization. Map the decision-making networks. Know who the change champions are. Build strategic alliances. And time your initiatives carefully. I have seen brilliant ideas die because they were introduced at the wrong time or through the wrong channel. Timing is a leadership skill. G is for generate momentum. Celebrate small wins. Document progress. Share success stories widely. Momentum compounds. Each small victory makes the next one more achievable and builds the organizational appetite for continued change. E is for embed changes. This is where most transformation efforts fail. People create change, but they do not institutionalize it. Update the policies, change the performance metrics, revise the job descriptions, modify the reward systems. If the change only lives in one person's passion or one committee's agenda, it disappears when that person leaves or that committee dissolves. Embedded change survives leadership transitions. That is how you build legacy. In the book, I reference Audre Lorde's reminder that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And that is a tension we have to sit with as Black women in corporate spaces. We are working within structures that were not designed for our success, and yet we are tasked with transforming them. The change framework gives you a way to do that creatively and strategically, using your position to create fundamental change while maintaining your effectiveness within the system. All right, now I want to get practical because frameworks are only as powerful as the action they produce. In Chapter 9, I include what I call the Legacy Blueprint exercise. Today, I'm going to walk you through a streamlined version that you can start working on tonight. Get your journal, open your notes app, pull up a fresh document, whatever your tool is. Part 1, your legacy vision statement. I want you to complete this sentence. In 10 years, I want to be remembered for, and I do not want a job title here. I want impact. How many individual lives do you want to have touched? What do you want to have changed about your organization's culture? What industry standard do you want to have influenced? What societal change do you want to have contributed to? Write those answers down. That is your North Star. Part 2, your opportunity audit. Look at where you are right now and ask yourself 3 questions. First, what opportunities can I create in my current role? Can you bring someone to a meeting they would not normally attend? Can you recommend someone for a visible project? Can you share an invitation? Second, what resources do I have that I can share? Think about knowledge, networks, platforms, and yes, budget or funding access. Third, what barriers have I observed that I have the position to address? Be specific. Write down at least one barrier and one action you could take in the next 30 days to begin addressing it. Part 3, your mentorship capacity. Be honest with yourself about this one. How many people can you mentor directly right now without burning out? If the answer is 1, that is fine. Start with 1. Determine your meeting frequency, your focus areas, and your boundaries. And here is something I talk about in the book. Stay open to reverse mentoring. The women you mentor will teach you things too, especially about emerging technologies, generational shifts, and perspectives you might not encounter otherwise. Mentorship is not a one-way street. The best mentor-mentee relationships are reciprocal, and they evolve. Part 4, one action this week. Before we close, I want you to commit to one specific action you will take this week. Just one. It could be sending an encouraging message to a colleague. It could be reaching out to someone in your network you have not connected with in a while. It could be recommending someone for a project. It could be forwarding an article or professional development opportunity to a woman earlier in her career. It does not have to be grand. Remember what I say in the book: small actions compound into significant transformation. Legacy is built daily through consistent advocacy. Before we move to the outro, I want to give you one more quick exercise because this is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of us. I call this the sponsorship audit. Answer these 4 questions honestly. Question 1. In the last 90 days, have I recommended a Black woman for a stretch assignment, a project, or a role? If yes, how many times? Question 2. When was the last time I said someone's name in a room where decisions were being made, and that person was not present? Question 3. Do I have a relationship right now where I am actively sponsoring someone? Not just mentoring, but sponsoring. Question 4. If not, who is one person I could begin sponsoring this month? If your answers reveal a gap, that is not a failure. That is awareness. And awareness is the first step in the Shield Resilience Strategy Framework, which is available as a free guide. Self-awareness about where you are and where you want to be is the foundation of every transformation. So use this audit not as a guilt trip, but as a launching pad. Let me bring this home with something I wrote in Chapter 9 that I believe deeply. Your resilience becomes a form of resistance against systems that were not designed for your success. Every time you create an opportunity for another Black woman, every barrier you remove, every voice you amplify, you are reshaping what is possible in corporate spaces. Toni Morrison built her freedom and then spent decades making sure other people could build theirs. She was the first Black woman to serve as a senior fiction editor at a major publishing house, and she used that position to make sure she would not be the last. She was writing masterpieces and opening doors at the same time. She did not wait for permission. She did not wait for the organization to create a diversity initiative. She was the initiative. That is what I am asking of you, not to be everything to everyone, but to be strategic about using the freedom, the access, and the position you have to free someone else. Develop pipeline, open networks, offer sponsorship, real sponsorship, remove barriers, share resources, and when you are ready to transform systems, use change. Critique constructively, harness your influence, align with power, navigate the politics, generate momentum, and embed those changes so they outlast you. As Maya Angelou taught us, when you learn, teach. When you get, give. Our legacy grows through the success of those we lift. If this episode resonated with you, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, who is one person whose career you could intentionally invest in this month? Tag them. Let them know you see them. That is how this work starts, one intentional action at a time. And if you want to go deeper into the frameworks we discussed today, pick up your copy of Rise and Thrive, a Black woman's blueprint for leadership excellence. The link is in the description. Chapter 9 includes the full legacy blueprint exercise, the impact assessment tool, and detailed strategies for customizing this work based on your career level and industry. The free Shield Resilience Strategy Guide is also linked in the description. It is your personal toolkit for navigating everything we talked about today with confidence and grace. And if you have questions you want me to tackle on air, that is what the Ask Shay series is for. Drop your questions in the comments, and it might just become a future episode. If you are listening to this on a Tuesday or Thursday, make sure you catch my Unlock, Empower, Transform podcast. That is where we focus on high-value leadership for all leaders. But Wednesdays are ours. Subscribe if you have not already. Share this episode with a Black woman in your network who needs to hear this today. And remember, lift intentionally, climb strategically, and transform permanently. I am Shay Blackman, and until next Wednesday, rise with purpose, thrive with authenticity.